African continent since past year. So according to the International Labour Organization, 70% of the employees on the African continent are vulnerable. And in order to solve that issue, young African must have the innovative mindset and must think about how to create jobs. That is, today we are going to talk about entrepreneurship and innovation. My name is Carl Kenye. Welcome on Career Show. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe in order not to miss any session. Today we are going to receive a great man, a source of inspiration for many young entrepreneurs, a social entrepreneur, an innovator. We are going to receive an entrepreneur from South Africa, Sir Hennie Botes, who is the founder of Moladi Construction Technology. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
So, sir, I was trying to present yourself to those that are watching you, but if you may present yourself in your own way, or if I may ask, who is Sir Hennie Botes?
Thank you. I was born in Durban. I then qualified as a tradesman, as a tool and die maker. And my wife and I got married in 1980, and I read a book called Think and Grow Rich.
No.
It does not work. You have to work to grow rich. You cannot think to grow rich. And the mothers complained that if you have a baby, you must carry the bath water from the bathroom to fill it up to the bedroom to wash the baby. And when you finish with the baby, you must pick the bath up and go pour it out again. So I designed a baby bath that fits on the big bath, because the book said solve a problem and sell the solution. And all of a sudden I sold 20,000 baby baths every month. So because I solved the problem, I kept on looking for problems. And when I looked at housing, I saw how slow housing was being produced. One brick on top of the other, one brick, and then after the brickwork, then you have to plaster or you have to chase for the piping. So it was very, very slow. So when I look at tool making a tool and making plastic components, the cycle is very quickly. So I thought, how do I use the process of injection molding in construction? So then I said I must make a mold of the house, and then I can fold the mold, and next day I can take the mold off. And that is really where Moladi started in 1986, with the thought of how do we solve housing problem. So today we export to 23 countries, most of them are in Africa, and it has grown to be a tool to empower people to help themselves. There are no companies anymore that will employ people in the way that they used to employ them in the past. Our schools and education system don't teach children to create an opportunity for themselves. In reality, the education department creates students to go work for someone else. So we have to use a mind shift. And in order to become entrepreneurial, you need to look at what is needed. So Maslow, for me, said there are two products which is vital for mankind. It's food and shelter. Maslow did not say jobs producing food and shelter, but in 2021, that is the key to success, to produce food and to produce shelter, because food is really the only product that is sustainable. You need food every day. Housing can come to a point where you have finished the demand, but the demand, the backlog in Africa is 4 million houses a year. So the opportunity for housing is phenomenal. Then, if you look in South Africa, we need 3.2 million houses. Every house has 5 door frames and 5 window frames. If we have a backlog of 3.2, this is just subsidy houses. That means 17 million door frames, 17 million window frames. So imagine how many entrepreneurs, youth, can form a small little cooperative and start making window and door frames for the housing production line. And that is really what I believe Moladi will bring about in Africa.
Okay, good. So if I may ask, what are the difficulties you encounter now that you are entrepreneurs? Because we know that entrepreneurship is a long-term journey, and being an entrepreneur, you surely face up and down. So what are the difficulties that you encounter daily?
I think that for me is that entrepreneurs speak a language to bank managers, and the bank manager doesn't understand entrepreneurial language. The bank manager gets a pay packet. Every month he gets paid. Yeah. Entrepreneur, we make our pay packet. So if we speak entrepreneur language to a bank manager, he does not understand risk. He does not understand vision. He does not understand creation, because he must do a job, and the job is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 5 o'clock he goes home. Yeah. Entrepreneurs don't go home 5 o'clock.
Exactly.
They work till very late at night. So you need to really be passionate about where you are going, because you can be discouraged if you don't achieve something in the short term. An entrepreneurial spirit is something that is, it's not a race, it's many races. It's not a marathon that you win. It's lots of small races. So you've got to continuously look at goals and reward yourself well when you achieve that goal. Because once you achieve that, you should already have your second goal in place. And it's not something that there is a book to teach you how to be an entrepreneur, or me. It's like when you become a father or a mother, or there's no book to tell you how to be a father or a mother. Entrepreneurship is something that they take you and they throw you in a swimming pool and they say swim. Like you said, you cannot swallow the elephant overnight. We don't get to stardom overnight. There's very few institutions or very few newspapers or magazines or departments in the government that pats entrepreneurs on the back to encourage them. But if you make a movie, you can be a movie star overnight. Yeah. If you can play golf and you can hit the ball and you hit the ball in the hole, you're a star overnight. But entrepreneurship cannot be measured like that. Entrepreneurship is different. Entrepreneurship is, I think you get two entrepreneurs, especially from where I look at it. One entrepreneur focuses on himself. It's me, 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 me. Another entrepreneur is people. So there's a lovely little saying that says, some people climb the mountain to see the people. Some people climb the mountain so that the people can see him. So then of course it's like a little bit of an ego thing. It's me, 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 me. And I think entrepreneurship in reality, of course it is about changing your situation, your scenario, your income, is driving a nice car, wearing a nice watch, all those things, having, you know, a very pretty girlfriend, and all those things that you desire, that inspires you to be successful.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, it's not about you and me. It's about what legacy we leave behind with people. Because we can use our knowledge and our experience and our growth to uplift thousands, millions of people and make a massive impact. And that to me is true entrepreneurship. It's not, if you look at Thomas Edison, the light bulb, imagine if we didn't have light bulbs. So the importance of a light bulb is maybe not even recognized. Some people would say, you know, going to the moon with SpaceX, that's wow. But there's only a few people that benefit from going to the moon. I'm not interested in going to the moon. So it really is, where do we want to focus? What do we think is important? And for me, I think ideas, entrepreneurship, inspiration comes from when you help people. It makes your heart feel very good. It maybe doesn't touch your back pocket, but it makes you
feeling good,
yes.
feeling happy.
Absolutely.
So we're going to take a short break and we are coming back in a minute. Welcome back on Career Show. We are still with Sir Hennie Botes, who is the founder of Moladi Construction Technology. So, sir, you share with us your worst experience in business, like it's a day when everything went wrong. What you learned from that experience?
Carl, I think there are quite a few of those. But in time, you get to not overreact on the negative. Because remember, when the negative happens, it becomes like a big mountain. It becomes like a big explosion. And so there have been many disappointments in my life. If I go right back to the beginning of Moladi, and I would cast a wall, and when you get nearly to the top, then something breaks at the bottom. Then you're so despondent, you're so negative that, you know, is this really going to work? So you concentrate on fixing that, and then you fix it. And then as you go along, something else happens. And so you continuously have those disappointments. I would say there was a company once that did not follow protocol, and we had to build 50 houses, and the norm is in South Africa is that when you register to do a development, you need to register the development with an entity that would ultimately give the homeowner a mortgage for the house. So the developer was supposed to register the project, and they didn't do that. So then when the inspectors came to site, they said, oh, whoa, stop. This has not been registered. So everybody was looking for someone to blame. So that was a very big issue in my life. And a friend of mine just said, he just said, don't overreact, just wait. And as we had meeting after meeting after meeting, then the truth came out. Because at that point I didn't know that they did not register the project. So that was because the damages was big. Yeah. And then you would say, you know, that's not what I expected. And then we overcame that. So, and now today we make sure that before you start building that it is registered. So you learn from your mistakes. I think it's like bicycle riding. You'll fall off, and you can fall off even though you're very good. But every time you fall off, you've learned something. As long as you get back on the bicycle, that to me is the most important.
Wow, wow, exactly. So talking about resilience, talking about motivation, I want to ask you this question because you're talking now to the youth. Motivation amongst young Africans are generally lost due to lack of funding or difficulties in finding funding for projects. What do you recommend? Because many people out there are having great ideas, but they are discouraged because they don't have capital, they don't have funds to start.
Yeah. For me, I think that obviously, firstly, Carl, would be that people would have to form a bit of an association, like an entrepreneur Cameroon, and where you can come together, where you can invite people in and form an association. Because as individuals, if you look at sardines, the fish, when the eating fish starts circling, they make a bundle. The fish that get eaten are the ones that are not part of the bundle. So what we've got to do is make sure that we create a get-together point. And this get-together means that we can then invite people from the outside into this and address many issues for the whole group rather than individual. So then secondly, it's always been my goal to put together a yardstick of the idea. Because many people think, for instance, I'm going to make a better mousetrap. But you've got to plug this mousetrap into electricity, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that. Then the mousetrap in reality is not a product that's going to be sold. The most important thing about entrepreneurship, if you develop a product or if you manufacture a product, is the selling of the product. Not the manufacturing, not the idea. It is the selling of it, the income generation. So a lot of people focus on, wow, this is a great idea, but it has no value, it cannot be sold. And they will pursue that for a very long time, and then ultimately the doors will close. So you need advice from someone to say to you whether you're really on the right track or not. And it's then very difficult because it becomes your baby. If you're the entrepreneur of designing a product, then it's mine. You mustn't talk bad about my baby. you don't. So you must be big enough that other people can critique you and ask you questions as to how are you going to do this, how are you going to do that, because that opens your mind. We cannot use school with a formula for all children, and that is really where it suppresses entrepreneurship. Because when you get out of school, then they say, oh, now you have to go to university. So you go to university, you get a degree, then they say, what experience do you have? So still no job. So the world concentrates on universities to create jobs here. No one looks at creating jobs here. So many times when I go to Africa, and I drive to our meeting. Then at the robots, you have somebody with a tire around him. He's got a big bowl of fruit on his head. Then he has cell phone cards in his hand, and he has lighters, and he has cigarettes, and he's like a walking shop.
Yeah.
So in a sense, he's an entrepreneur. But you see, that entrepreneur lives from this morning till this evening, and then what he earned, he eats tonight. Then tomorrow he has to do the same thing. So he does not produce the goods, he only sells the goods. So what we've got to look at is, how does Africa start producing their own goods? It's no use bringing goods in and letting people at the robot sell your goods, because then the people that make the product is really the people that make the money. So why don't we in Africa start using our natural resources to start producing our own product? Why do we ship all our natural resources out? I mean, in Cameroon, I've seen tree trunks, trees this diameter, massive, truck after truck after truck, and all that wood goes to China. Why don't we start a manufacturing plant in Cameroon? Why do we ship the trees out of Cameroon? Because we get very little for the tree. So I think we need to have a shift when it comes to education.
Oh, well, so you talk about local production, talk about education. With your experience, if you were asked to advise our head of state on how measures to put in place to stimulate entrepreneurship for the young African, what will you say? What can you tell them?
Please, Mr. President, do not put a politician in position that entrepreneurs have to report to a politician, because politicians don't understand entrepreneurs. This is the biggest problem. So there's a wonderful saying that says you have three types of people. The first type is people who see. The second type is people who see when you show them. And then the third type is people that don't see. So when we do entrepreneurship and when government wants to stimulate job creation, they must not take a bureaucrat or someone that does not understand entrepreneurship. And even a university cannot teach you entrepreneurship because it's out of a book. Entrepreneurs are people that do things without books. They will maybe make mistakes, but eventually they will get there. So a lot of them obviously need to be supported. And this is really what government needs to focus. So on this coming Monday, there's an article in the Herald of exactly the question that you've posed, because this article addresses President Cyril Ramaphosa. And it says, what do we need to do to create jobs for the youth in South Africa? Now, if we have a solution for job creation in South Africa, then in reality this becomes a solution for Africa, because we are African. And I found it very ironic that you would have people from Germany and from Sweden and Denmark and England and France coming to Africa to tell us how to solve African problems. Because in reality, our Africa is very, very unique. So when it comes to Moladi and the way that we build houses, we don't go to, let's say, Yaoundé, and we open the container with the formwork or the coffrage, and we want to start building, and then we find out we don't have a hammer. So now we have to get back in the car, go to town or the city and go buy a hammer. So when you get to the shop owner looks at your watch. If you have a nice watch, the hammer becomes more expensive. Because if he sees me and he knows I'm not French, then the hammer that is maybe $5 can become $50, because I don't know. In South Africa, every shop has got a price on it. So before I go to pay for it, I can say, do I want this or don't I want this? Or there's 5 hammers and I can choose a $5 hammer or a $50 hammer. So if that is how Africa works, in America you can phone DHL and say to DHL, bring me a hammer. Very different. So we have to adapt to our norms and conditions in Africa. And a lot of the first world ideas does not understand the issues that makes Africa different to the first world. And that is an advantage for us. It's not a disadvantage, it is an advantage, because we know what and how to do it in Africa. So when I go to Ghana, to Gabon, to Nigeria, to Kenya, I've been to 64 countries. So you learn from that exposure. And you apply that to your product development. So many times maybe you design something for your own community, but eventually it starts opening up your mind, and then you say, oh well, what if I take it out of the community and I go to say to Niger, or I go to Benin. I think this is what entrepreneurship is. In reality, you don't stop learning. It just carries on and on and on and on. Perpetual entrepreneurship.
Wow. So you have been talking about unemployment. You all know that unemployment has drastically rise. Exactly, it's with the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. So what advice can you give to the young graduates?
You know, it's very complex to try and get a generic solution to the problem of unemployment. Every country, every city, every town, every village has got different dynamics in Africa. In South Africa, in Namibia, Botswana, Mozambique. So for me, I believe that when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, somewhere inside me, I knew that I would be an inventor. And today I really am an inventor. So I believe that many people know when they are young what they want to do, like you. I'm sure that you have followed your dream. So it's very difficult for me to speak to everybody with a dream. Maybe somebody doesn't have a dream at 5, maybe they get a dream at 12. So it's very difficult to say become a designer or become an inventor.
So if I may ask you, what are the 5 goals according to you to be successful in life?
So number 1 on my life, or my list, would be prayer. Because for me, I found that all my difficulties has been addressed in the Bible. So there are many examples for me when I go back to the examples in the Bible of how problems were solved. So I would say that my faith would be number one. Number two, a very supportive family. I think it's easier to cope with pressures and stress when you have a support base. So for me, my family has been very instrumental in supporting me over the years. Third, I think that one of the issues that I've always promoted is not Hennie Botes, not me. I promoted my product because I was not selling me, I was selling my product. So the emphasis was never on me. The emphasis has always been on the product. Then your yes must always be your yes, and your no must always be your no. Your character, your reputation can be lost overnight by not doing something that you said you would do. I'm on 5 already, or was that 4? And I would say that, you know, there's some things that we just don't plan for, that happens in your process, the unknown or the surprises. And I would say that always in my life, those unknowns, those surprises have always taken me to the different level. And it's as if you work towards a goal, and then you find you like a ship on the ocean. There's no wind. You've got your sails up, you're ready to go, but there's no wind. So what do? You've got to wait for the wind. And sometimes that is where you look at your life retrospectively, you look at where should you go, where you want to go. And that wind-still process builds a tremendous amount of thought and character and vision. So for me it was very disappointing that we have people in positions as ministers that do not act on their job description. And if I look at the president relies on those people to do their job description, what they are tasked to do in the ministry. And then of course when you get to the point where that is fixed after a long time, that is phenomenally rewarding, and that just simply motivates you to carry on for another 100 years.
No, exactly, sir. But you came out with Moladi's system, which is a great invention, and I think Africa must be proud of what you're doing. And but the question is, what advice can you give to the young African? Because many of us want to create, especially now with this COVID-19, where entrepreneurs need to reinvent themselves, need to adjust with the new normal. What advice or what are the tips you can give that can guide the entrepreneurs on how to innovate, on how to reinvent themselves?
If I go to what Moladi does, what we've decided to do is for the community to form a cooperative. Because then we are not individuals, we're a combination of people. So you could be clever in bookkeeping, you could be clever in planting food, you can be clever in sewing a dress, you can be clever in building a house. So communities need all of those things. So what we do is, once we form a cooperative, then Moladi goes to the cooperative and says to the cooperative, what can we help you with that you need? So there we interact immediately with budding entrepreneurs. So we don't go to them with mathematics and science. We go to them with, what would you like to do? So let's say we're going to build 1,000 houses or 50 houses. We know we're going to need door frames. So we'll say to the community, who would like to weld? So they will say, what's weld? Because at school they were not taught what weld is. So we'll take a welding machine and we'll take a jig and we put the steel and we show them what welding is. Then, oh yes, I'd like to do that. So we give them the welding, we teach them, put the helmet on, we teach them to weld, and when they finish with the door, they must grind it, they must paint it, and they must put the hinges, and then we pay them for the door frame. Now we're talking about circular economy. So we use housing to stimulate the supply chain. So if you look at the automotive industry, if you don't have people that make tires or windows, glass or seats or engines or pistons, do you think the automotive industry would establish a car plant in Yaoundé? No. So what we've got to do is we've got to establish the raw material supply chain so that we can take the silicon sand to make glass, to make window frames for the cars. So we've got to, the opportunity is vast because we have the silica, but we ship it out. So we don't have a plant that melts the sand to make glass. How many children know that glass comes from sand? Not many. So this is the type of thing that we as a Moladi will transfer to a community. So we can't fix entrepreneurship or poverty or unemployment overnight. But this is the best way of ensuring that long term it's going to happen. So what we've got to do is we've got to create a business network. And that business network is creating cooperatives where we can share information. We as Africa should work together. We've got 1.2 billion people. We don't have to get in a boat and go to Europe. We don't have to. We can create it here. And I know that it is, people think that Europe is an opportunity. But once you get there, what are you going to do? Maybe you become a waiter. Is that rewarding? Maybe not. No. So this is really where we should be focusing on, is to say, how do we do it?
Yeah, so talking about solidarity, talking about the art of coming together, what is your point of view on intra-African trade?
Again, many of the donating companies overseas are very skeptical to send money to an African government because the money gets lost before it reaches its intended point. So if someone wants to give money for construction for schools, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Germany, then the money comes to a cooperative. And the cooperative builds the classrooms with the money donated. Because if you look in South Africa, we have a Department of Housing. The Department of Housing gets a budget of 33 billion rand. If you look at how many houses was built 2018, 2019, or 2019, 2020, I'm not too sure. with the previous minister, it was only 96,000 houses. The rest of it was pay packets and offices and cars. So government creates a department that has so many people employed that all the money that was supposed to go to houses is going to salaries. So then it is no benefit to the people. It's a benefit to the political party, or it's a benefit to the government, but not to the people. So we have to break that cycle. We have to make sure that whatever money is meant for the community goes for the community. So my whole philosophy is empower people to help themselves. It's not a question of giving them the proverbial fish. We have to teach the people how to fish. And this is what I think Africa lacks. People become despondent, youth become despondent, and then they would go to this or that because they don't like this life. But if they do that, that life is fairly nice. But when it stops, you come back to this life. Then you become unhappy again. So what we've got to do is hold hands with government. We won't replace them, but we will hold hands with government and say to government, let us be the implementing agent of your vote. That proverbial public-private partnership, PPP, is very important. So government must understand that we will generate the skills in order for them to produce what they need, to empower them, the people, for what they need. Dams. You know, we've given millions of people houses in South Africa, but we've got to build dams. Oh. Now we don't have water.
Yeah, so according to you, what are the three promising sectors on the African continent? Like when you see Africa in maybe in 5, 10, 25 years, what are the three sectors that you can encourage the youth to go for?
I must be biased here. Number one is construction, housing. Because that's what drives me. We need 4 million houses a year. Africa does not have a house for $2,000. They have shacks, but not a house. So the reason people made Henry Ford famous was the majority of automotive manufacturers produced a Cadillac. Henry Ford came along and produced a Model T for $1,200. The Cadillac was $5,000. So the majority of people couldn't afford the Cadillac. If we look at housing in Africa, everybody builds houses for these people. No one builds houses for these people. What does Mr. Dangote sell? Cement. So, and he sells flour, food, and cement. So that example is for me number one. Is what Maslow said. 2 things: food, shelter. I would say the basic needs of people. It could be transport. When I was in Cameroon, we looked at health, hospitals. And there were 16 hospitals that were needed throughout Cameroon. And once you put a hospital down, you immediately can create a village. And a village would need someone that makes bread, someone that sells beer. So it's really what people need. So if you can tap into that, and we in Africa need many, many more cities. If you look at Abuja, Abuja was a new city that would take people out of Lagos. Didn't happen because the planning in Abuja was not done properly. So what we've got to do is, in reality, we've got to create many villages. And the village becomes a town. and the town becomes a city. So lots of people say, oh, we'll build a smart city. You don't build smart cities. You build smart villages. They become smart cities. And the opportunity, once again, is the population growth is massive, and production, I think, is going to be most important. So we could look at food production. We could export our African food from, especially Cameroon, with all your water. You are fortunate that you have so much water. If you look at using your water and your land, you could supply Ethiopia. So food production doesn't have to be only for Cameroon. We need to look at the continent of Africa. We got to, why does USA ship food from America to Ethiopia? Why don't we do it in Africa? We can. So I think it's those basic fundamental needs that need to be fulfilled.
Okay, sure, sir. So we are almost at the end of the interview, and the question I want to ask you now is, what advice can you give to young and future entrepreneurs and African leaders listening to us?
I think the first one is don't lie. If you don't know something, don't pretend you know. I'll tell you how I work, and I think it will be a good example for any entrepreneur to understand that this model is really applicable to anything that you do. Michael Schumacher stands on podium 1 after a Formula 1 race, and he pops the champagne. And the audience is there, and they're all, yay, Michael Schumacher. And they have the Ferrari and the red shirts. And at the back of Michael is the red Ferrari, a phenomenal car that didn't break down. So if the car broke down, then Michael would not stand on the podium. So Michael had to rely on a very good car. And around the car, there are people that change the tires in 6 seconds. If they took 1 minute, then Michael Schumacher would not stand on podium 1. So in life, it is a team effort. Not only about me. It's about us. And if you're not sure, Michael Schumacher did not know how to work on the engine. He had a champion that worked on the engine. So when you're an entrepreneur and you don't know how the engine works, go ask someone, how does the engine work? They will gladly share the information. But if you start saying, I know how an engine works, and you talk nonsense, then people would not see you as an entrepreneur. So really, you should never think about reinventing the wheel. There are times that, I was good at this with injection molding, but when it came to the chemical in the wall, I didn't know. So I rely on many champions in the pits to support me, and I think that is very, very important. Yeah. Then, of course, when you speak financial, maybe you have to go sit with the bank manager and you have to tell the bank manager you need some money. And they say to you, okay, we'll draw up a cash flow. How much do you have? What value do you have? Do you have a house? Do you have a car? Is it paid for? All this type of thing. So I think that be careful not to use your income to flash the me. Use your income to develop your company. So yeah, I think, you know, don't look at yourself as me. Also on entrepreneurship, there are lots of people that will give you advice. If anybody, like, I mean, you know, you phoned me, you said, Hennie, can we meet? Yeah, sure. Can we chat? Yeah, sure. So it's not a question that you have to be scared of people with knowledge. You know, people are very scared when they come up with an idea. And there are people out there that will steal your idea. So I'm not saying NDAs are not good, but I believe, again, that God gives you that idea because He wants you to run with that idea. He's not going to take that idea and give it to you and allow it to be stolen by somebody else for them to make success. That's not how God works. We have to look a little bit futuristic. You know, what is the trend going to be in next year? 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? And it's that's going to spark us into doing something that is applicable in the future. Not just applicable today, because then we have a very short lifespan. You can plant an avo tree, or you can plant a tomato tree plant. If you plant a tomato plant, in 6 months you would have had the tomatoes and the plant would die. It would go through its cycle. If you plant an avo tree, you would wait 5 years before you can have your first avo, but you will have avos for 50 years. So we have to look, are we a tomato entrepreneur or are we an avo entrepreneur? Are we long-term entrepreneurs that prepare for 5 years before we sell our first avo?
If you have the opportunity to be at my age now, to change something in your journey, what will change and why? In few sentences.
I don't think I'll change anything. There was everything that I experienced was very, very necessary to who I am today. So if I missed any of those life experiences, then I would maybe still have to experience it. So I'm pleased that I am where I am today and not in your shoes.
So just to end the interview, I'll just ask you, like, how do you see Moladi in 20 years?
The goal with Moladi is to replace the brick when it comes to house building. We take a mold and we mold a brick for thousands of years, nearly 3,500 years. We mold a brick in a mold. Then we take this brick and we put it on top of each other. What I do is I make a mold and I mold the house. So I shorten the supply chain. I reduce the cost. I decrease the skills because now I don't have to be clever to put the brick in one straight line.
Yeah.
So this is all value for the customer. Quality, strength, earthquake proof, all these things are very, very vital. So for me, Moladi will be the Model T of housing, and maybe I will be the Henry Ford of housing in the future.
Okay. So what we will think today is that for you listening to this video, don't focus on yourself, but focus on people, focus on the community. As an entrepreneur, you have to be resilient. I know that the journey, the entrepreneurship journey, is too long. So you just have to be disciplined, you just have to be honest. If you don't know something, you better have to ask than pretending that you know. Is really important. And as we said, people around us still need shelter and they need food. So there are the sectors that you can go. If you want to innovate, you have first to think about what the need of the people. Don't focus on yourself, but focus on the people. Thank you, Sir Hennie.
I'm highly impressed. Remember when you interviewed me, you want to look into my mind. When I look at you, put this together, then I have an opportunity to look into your mind. And I'm very impressed with what I see. You are very professional, you are very passionate, and you gather information that somehow you keep in the back of your mind, that you ask me a question, and then when you consolidate the whole meeting, you go fetch that out of your mind that I spoke to maybe an hour ago. So, absolutely impressed. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I much appreciate it.
You listening to this video, you surely have idea, you surely have developed solution that may create impact or that may solve a problem on the African continent. You have surely learned one or two things from the great experience from this video. So tell us now, what can stop you from being an entrepreneur? What can stop you to change the African continent? You're on Career Show, subscribe and don't miss any session. Thank you.